Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is January 31st, Sunday, 10 o'clock a.m., Calgary, Alberta time, and I'm absolutely happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is up to us, and we're covering on, the last few Sundays. Last Sunday, I sort of didn't get to cover too much on the topic of drug abuse and addiction, but the Sunday before we had started talking about drug abuse and addiction, signs, symptoms, and help for drug problems, and prescription drug abuse, and what causes drug abuse and addiction. So we went through all of that from a great article that I found. So we'll be on here today for half an hour, continuing on, and I do have a guest call-in number. You're more than welcome to phone in with topic-related information if you want to share a resource or maybe a reference that you know of, a great place that does some good work for people who are suffering with a drug addiction or drug abuse problems. And you're all welcome. This is a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and my guest call-in number is 917-889-3736, and we'll be on for about half an hour. So you're welcome to phone in. If I don't see you on the chat room right away, or on the switchboard or the chat room, just hang in there, because I do check when I'm not reading. When I'm not reading from the material, I take a look and see if anyone's there. So please hang on. And I do appreciate all the support from all my friends all the way around the world, in Australia and England, and in the U.S. and just the East Coast and the West Coast. I love you guys so much, and I thank you all for listening and tuning in and just being here for me. So I wanted to say, that I'm not a professional counselor. I'm not a professional, actually, of any kind. I don't hold any certificates in counseling or therapy. This is not a professional show. It's just me, a lady in Calgary who sits on Blog Talk Radio just because I care about people and I want to help people just realize that they're not alone, first of all, and that, they can have a good life and they should have a good life. Everyone deserves to have a good life, and hence that's why I'm so interested in child abuse prevention and human rights abuse prevention, because it's really up to us. If no one's reaching out to you, make sure that you reach out to someone. Get some help. Don't suffer on your own and suffer in silence. And life is good, and it can be very, very good, and it should be good. And no one deserves to be suffering. We see it in the news. We see it in the papers. It's everywhere. People are having so many problems, and these are people. These are people's sisters, brothers, mothers, fathers, aunts and uncles and cousins and kids, and really no one deserves to have a horrible life. So that's why I'm doing this show, just to be an encouraging voice and say, you're not alone and there is help, and we just need to keep reaching out until we find the actual help that we need. So that's so big in my heart. And if you're under 18, maybe you could have someone check this show out with you, like a teacher, if you don't have a good parental figure who actually cares enough about what you're listening to, because that's the whole issue. I care very much about children. I think that children deserve to be treated fairly, and really, with all the creeps and the weirdos out there doing stuff, to children, it's so important that you, if you're listening to this and you're 18, you can check with a teacher maybe and ask them if this is something they should be listening to, that you should be listening to, right? Because I don't know where the players are now, and I'm not sure how many kids are listening, and I do actually welcome children, because children are the ones that need to hear this the most, I think. But I just want you all to be safe, because I care so much. I'd rather you not listen to the show and get approval from a teacher or somebody, a neighbor or something, who might listen in one time and say, okay, well, that seems to be all right. Because I do care about you, and that's how much I care about you. I'd rather you not listen to the show and make sure that it's something that's okay for you to listen to. It can, I do cover abuse topics and child abuse, child sexual abuse issues, and all that stuff. So that's why I don't want anyone to be, upset or hurt by the topics. I don't want anybody to go away and feel depressed or anything. And so make sure that you should be listening to this program, right? It's so important. I do care, and that's the whole issue and why I'm doing this show. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. We'll start right away. I wanted to get right into this. This is www.helpguide.org. And they have great information on there about everything. It's understand, prevent, and resolve life's challenges. That's helpguide.org. And they have great stuff on there for just about everything you can think of. Child abuse, addictions, parenting tips, mental health awareness, and everything to do with everything, really. just to help people out. And I think the information is very good, so that's why I use a lot of their stuff, because I really like it. It's very simple and to understand, and it's easy to. It's good because it just gets you to the right information right away and doesn't go on to too many other little side notes. It's really good for just straight information, and that's what we need. So we'll start right away with looking at mental and emotional signs of abuse and addiction, and that's drug abuse and addiction, right? Abuse, I'm reading right from their page. You can go right on their website and pull that up and see that I'm just reading right from the page. Abuse and addiction also affect mood, as drugs are abused for the temporary good feeling they provide. These feelings can vary depending on the drug used. Some mental and emotional signs include, and this is what they list off here, cycles of being unusually talkative, up and cheerful, with seemingly boundless energy. Another one is increased irritability, agitation, and anger. Another one is unusual calmness, unresponsiveness, or looking spaced out. Another one, apathy and depression. And then another one is paranoia, delusions. And they list off temporary psychosis or hallucinations. And the last one, lowered threshold for violence. Those are some of the feelings that can vary depending on the drug used that have an effect on emotional and mental issues, with people that are doing drugs. And I know I was a drug user for years, and so I can kind of relate to a lot of this stuff, actually to all of it. And so people do drugs for many different reasons, and it's a very sad thing because people's lives are ruined by drug abuse. Whether it's prescription drug abuse or illegal drug abuse, it doesn't matter. People's lives, can be completely ruined by drug abuse. And I've seen it in my own family. I've seen it in my friends. I've seen it in myself. And I know how bad it is. I know how hard it is to cope, and that's why a lot of people turn to drugs. I think it's a coping mechanism. And they might realize they have a problem, but they don't know how to go about getting better and how to get off these drugs. And because they're hooked on them, they can't, without some intervention and some help, they can't get off of them. And so their lives just continually become more and more of a mess. If there's children involved, it just messes with these children so badly. And so if you're a parent out there and you have drug problems, your kids are they're going to suffer because of that. So you want to make sure you get some help for you, and if you're a mother or father, or if you're a parent, or someone who has children, please make sure you get help for you and for your kids. It's so important. My parents did not do drugs. Everything that they did that was in their domestic violence and abuse was not from alcohol or drug use. It was all very much just from the hatred in their heart. So our parents didn't do drugs. But I knew kids and grew up with kids and was best friends with kids whose parents were drug users and alcoholics and all kinds of things. So I saw all kinds of stuff growing up. My brothers were drug users and ended up, their lives were ruined and literally ended because of drug use. And a friend of mine was shot and murdered in his driveway due to a drug deal gone bad. That's what they figure it was. And this stuff can happen. It happens in my life. It can happen in your life, and it's sad. And there needs to be something done. I don't want to see anyone suffer from drug abuse and drug addiction and ruin their lives. And we know it's happening right now while we speak on this show, that people's lives are being actually ruined and completely ended by drug use. And I find it just so sad because there's always these underlying issues that are surrounding this drug use. And, if a person could just reach out and get help for the drug addiction and also for themselves, what causes them to do the drugs, which could be any number of things, mental issues, emotional issues. You might have been abused, or you just might be someone who suffers from like depression or a bipolar disorder, whatever there's a different word for that now. But there's so many issues surrounding it, and really the drug abuse is just almost a secondary problem to what it's just masking what the original problem was. And that's what, in my case, that's what it was. I was using drugs just to for many reasons. I was using them for rebellion and just to say, hey, you messed up my life, now I'm going to screw it up even more. And I think a lot of teens sadly get to that point. So we're going to look at some of these other topics here. Teenagers and drug abuse. Well, I'll just keep reading on here. It can sometimes be hard. Oh yeah, and I kind of used them for an escape as well, right? And it wasn't just all about rebellion. It was very much an escape for me to escape from the reality of the home life that I was living in. So, there's many reasons people use drugs. Teenagers and drug abuse. It can sometimes be hard for parents to tell if their teenager has a drug problem. After all, teenagers are notorious for oversleeping, being argumentative, and pushing boundaries. This is what they're saying here. Or wanting their own privacy and space. If you suspect your teen has a drug problem, look for marked changes in behavior, appearance, and health. Is your teen suddenly having trouble in school? Does he or she seem more and more isolated or have a new group of friends? A teen with drug problems may spend a lot of time sleeping or be keyed up or unable to sleep. Have you noticed that money or objects that could be sold for drugs seem to be disappearing? Do prescription drugs seem to be used up too quickly? So these are some of the issues that parents can look for. If you care about your kid at all, you will want to know whether they're doing drugs or not. And there's ways to notice the differences and the changes in your teenager at home. If all of a sudden they're acting different, you can maybe they're not doing drugs, but you can at least get these parenting tips that are on these websites that point to how to talk to your child about your child and your teenager especially about drugs. Right? It's very important. Your kids, if they know that you aren't going to judge them and that you're really there for them and that you're not against them, because teenagers have that whole the whole issue of oh, my parents don't understand and they don't know what it's like, sort of thing, right? Well, if you maintain a good relationship with your kid, and they don't, even if they don't go along with it, but you just stay straight and steady, and don't kind of get off the handle and fly off at them and stuff, they'll realize that they can trust you, and if they have a problem, they would hopefully go to you. I know that my parents knew that my brothers were doing drugs, because my brothers were just always, one of my brothers especially, he just had so many bags of pills around the house. My mom would find them and dump them, or first she'd phone to see what they were, and then she'd get rid of them and dispose of them. But the thing is, he always had more, and he could always get more. So she knew there was a problem, but he actually went to rehab because he had a choice of going to rehab or jail because he had done some illegal stuff, and he went to rehab, but he only stayed for a short, maybe 1 week or 2 weeks, and he escaped from it because it was kind of like a unsecured rehab area, right? So these are the things that can happen to people, and it's just very bad. If the support isn't in the home from the very beginning, the kids are not going to trust the parents, and they won't care what the parents think. I know in my case that was the issue. My mom knew that I was doing drugs, and she knew that I was, high most of the time, and because of the abusive behavior that she had displayed towards me when I was growing up, I didn't care anymore what she thought. And so really I didn't care that she didn't want me to be on drugs. I was just like, well, whatever, I'm doing what I'm doing, and I don't care what you have to say about it. But if you treat your kids with respect and dignity, and you always have, and you let them know that you always will, even no matter what they bring home, no matter what situation's going on in their lives, they will understand that. Eventually it will clue into them, and they'll think, man, my parents actually care about me, and they love me for just who I am. Maybe I should talk about this problem with them. They're not going to hurt me, and they're not going to throw me out. So many times kids, try to talk to their parents, and they end up getting beaten on and thrown out of the house. I saw that myself personally. And with friends of mine and stuff, they won't discuss anything with you because obviously they can't trust your behavior. So make sure that you're on the up and up with your kids, and if as much as you possibly can be. I think it's just so important. I'm not a parent, but I know I was a kid, and I had days where my behavior wasn't very good. So I understand what it's like, for a parent on the other end, to be dealing with a teenager who's got a lot of problems, because it's hard, right? They sometimes don't listen, and they really don't want your input on anything because they're trying to learn how to make their way. But as long as you let them know, look, you're going to make your way, that's fine, but I'm here for you no matter what way you go. I am here for you, and you know that. So as long as your kids know that, I think that's just the most important thing. We'll move on here. Effects of drug abuse and addiction. What makes drug addiction problems so challenging to face as opposed to other mental or physical problems? Drug abuse affects the person's life in many ways, including health, finances, and stability. But it also affects the entire family, friends, colleagues, and even the community. What's more, the strong denial and rationalization of the person using drugs makes it extremely difficult to get help and can make concerned family members feel like they are the problem, right? Health, employment, and crime. Those who abuse drugs have a greater risk for health problems down the road, from neglecting their own health to risk of infectious disease like hepatitis or HIV from sharing needles. Heavy drug use directly affects health as well, including lung disease, arthritis, heart problems, brain damage, and death from overdose. And that's what happened to my brother. He overdosed and died in a shelter here in Calgary. And just terrible, just horrible. Productivity at work often suffers, and eventually trouble keeping a job or even homelessness can occur. And, my brothers were always homeless, and they once in a while had a place, but it wasn't very often. They were generally on the street and living these horrible lives, right? The urge to use is so powerful that criminal activity for money or more drugs can be a strong temptation. And we see this. I see this in my own city. I see these people walking around here. I know what situation they're in. I wish I could help them. There's so many people falling through the cracks, it's not even funny. And these are somebody's kids. These are somebody's sons, daughters, or somebody's brothers and sisters. And, it's so hard because how do you help them? How do you make them see that they need to get off these drugs and get help, right? It's such a huge issue for the families that surround, drug abuse and drug addiction, someone in their lives whose life is just floundering because of drug use. And nobody wants to see that, and a lot of people just say, well, it's their own problem. They're going to have to deal with it. And I mean, obviously they can't deal with it. That's why they're doing the drugs, and that's why they're out on the streets. That's why they're doing what they do. It's just really sad, very sad, and that's why if you're listening to the show right now and you know someone who's suffering from drug abuse, there's Al-Anon, there's all these different groups. I think there's Co-Anon, for cocaine. There's all the different like Al-Anon groups that help families deal with drug abuse. For a parent or a sister or brother or cousin or somebody who knows someone in their family is doing drugs and they know and it's affecting their lives, you can get support from these groups to kind of show you how to deal with it and how to cope with it. There are ways to cope with it, and we're gonna continue on every Sunday talking about this just as long as we need to, because it's so important. And I didn't get a chance to get too many resources together, but if you need help finding resources or numbers, telephone numbers, email, websites and stuff, let me know, because that's what I'm here to do, and that's what I'm going to be doing this week and next week, just continuing on Sundays with this talk about drug abuse and drug addiction, because it is such a huge problem, and I suffered through it myself, and I know what it's like, and I'm so glad to be drug-free. I smoke cigarettes, but I'm quitting those too. So, I mean, I'm glad because my life is my own. I'm not, I'm not having to be doing drugs just to cope, right? I'm finding ways to cope without drugs, and that's what my wish is for you, that we can cope without drugs, and that my wish is the same for you. There's ways to help ourselves, and we can do it. And let's see, we'll continue on here. Staying addicted, denial and rationalization. This is the next little article they have. One of the most powerful effects of drug abuse and addiction is denial. The urge to use is so strong that the mind finds, the urge to use is so strong that the mind finds many ways to rationalize drug use. Someone abusing drugs may drastically underestimate the quantity of drugs they are taking, how much it is costing them, and how much time it takes away from their family and work. They may lash out at concerned family members, making the family feel like they are exaggerating and overstating the problem. What makes this so frustrating for family members is the person abusing drugs often sincerely believes they do not have a problem and can make the family member feel like the dysfunctional one, right? That they're the ones with the problem. This denial and rationalization can lead to increased problems with work, finances, and relationships. The person abusing drugs may blame an unfair boss for losing her job, or a nagging wife for why or husband for why he or she is increasingly going out with friends to get high, while work and relationship stresses happen to everyone. An overall pattern of deterioration and blaming others may be a sign of trouble. So, that's just it. It's denial. The mind will work overtime to try to convince you that you don't have a problem and that it's everybody else's problem. My brother was like that. And that everything's cool with you. And I know even with my cigarettes, I'm trying to quit. I had quit for 14 months and I'm back on them. It's been about a month now, and my mind keeps telling me I don't need them, but yet something just tells me, oh, it's okay to buy a pack. It's the same exact thing. It's an addiction, and I did quit one time successfully for 14 months. Now I have to do it again, and that's just all there is to it. So this is why it's so important to make sure we reach out and get some help, right? Because there's all kinds of stuff on there on the web about quitting smoking, and there's groups, support groups and stuff. I haven't gotten into one of those yet, but I'm thinking about it because, here I am 5 weeks later still smoking, and I said I wasn't going to do it. So addiction is a real problem, and it stems from a lot of different things, and I know that I have a tendency to be addicted to whatever I like. So if it's chocolate or coffee or whatever it is, I like to just drink it and eat it all the time. So I have an addictive personality. It's probably some sort of a mental issue, and it could just be nerves, and it could be related to the childhood that I grew up in, and because it was horrible, it was like a nightmare, and so it very well could have been from a lot of things. And so I realize, I'm a person and I do count, and just because I have these issues going on doesn't mean that I can't have a full life, and all I have to do is keep walking it out. That's why I'm here to tell you, we just need to keep staying on it. We can overcome this stuff, we really can. And people have, and I love to listen to people who have stories who have overcome drug abuse, drug addiction, and they're walking free and clean, and they sit there and they say, look, I was there, I was there, I was on the streets, I was in hell basically, and look at me now. And they're out there saying you can do it. And I love people like that. We have some the Dream Home Center here in Calgary is one where they have people that go and speak at those places about the fact that they're clean, drug-free, and they got off of it, and their lives are just so much better, and they want to try to help everybody else, pulling everybody with them, right? It's just so important, right? And so you want to listen to those guys. If you can possibly find on the website information about people who have been through the same situations, right, and have come out from it and have made their way. I'm one, I'm except for the cigarettes, I am drug-free, and I'm very, very happy to be drug-free. And so, I can't tell you how happy I am, and just to know that I'm not going to ever have to struggle with that again. So we'll just keep going here. Drug abuse in the family. Sadly, drug abuse and addiction doesn't only affect the person abusing drugs. It affects friends, family, and the entire society. Child abuse and neglect is much more common when there is drug abuse in the family. The abuser may neglect a child's basic needs in the quest for more drugs, or lack of impulse control can lead to increased physical and emotional abuse. Drug abuse by a pregnant woman affects the developing baby's health, and domestic violence also happens more frequently. Abusing drugs leads to higher risk of injuries and death to self and others in car accidents. That was me. I was always driving around quite high, and had more than one accident actually. I'm so thankful I didn't kill anybody. And drug abuse by pregnant women, it affects the baby's health, and this happens all the time. We see it in the news. It's everywhere, and it's so sad, right? And it also increases the risk for child abuse and neglect if you're a parent who has children, right? Like we were talking earlier. It's sad because the parents have problems too, but then again, your children are counting on you to make sure that their needs are being met. And so that's why it's so important for drug users to make sure that they understand that their children are counting on them every single day. And of course it's hard. Life is hard. We're all coping with whatever we've got. Some people are coping with cancer. Some people are coping with death in their family. Some people are coping with huge problems in their lives. And, we all have to cope, right? And so, if you have children and you're a drug user, just think how your children are going to have to cope, with you as a drug user. It's going to be incredibly hard on them if they even survive it, or if you survive it. So that's the whole issue. I don't want anybody to suffer, and I don't want to see people ruin their lives over this. And that's why I'm here to say, please make sure you get some help, reach out, make some phone calls, get into front of your phone book, start looking for Al-Anon, Co-Anon, all the different groups that are working with people who have drug problems, and families, to support the families around these people. So important, because our family was, it started out, just a lot of domestic violence and stuff. But when my brothers got older, and abuse, child abuse. And when my brothers got older, they started doing drugs, and I always said I would not do drugs because I could see what what was happening to them, and I didn't like it. And I thought, boy, this is terrible. Look what's happening to my brothers because of the drug use. And I knew why they were doing drugs, because of the situation in our home was not good. But the thing is it added more stress, because then, of course, now there's the stress of two drug users in the home who are causing problems for my parents, and my parents were already high-strung and stressed out, so it added just that much more stress. And then when I turned 12 years old, I started getting high and doing actually quite illicit drugs, and I kept doing them until I was 21. So it was only a couple of years during that time of that nine years that I actually kind of wasn't doing drugs, but I continued right on until I was 21, and a lot of heavy-duty drugs, and I think, I was just bent on destroying myself, and I was just bent on this life that I had grown up and seen so much destruction and stuff, and it was just manifesting in my life, all the time, and I was headed for real trouble, and many times I was headed for real trouble, and I thought, I don't want to live like that. I really don't. And when my brother committed suicide, I was 21 years old, and he committed suicide, and I thought, that's not the way I want to go. I'm going to have to get off drugs. He was a cocaine user for years and had many, many mental problems and emotional problems and drug problems, and that was just not the way I wanted to go. I thought, no, I cannot keep doing this, because I could end up in the same situation. So that's why I'm just saying to you, we just need to reach out, make sure we get the proper professional help, get someone that can help you with this. Don't stay in silence, and don't stay, feeling that you're alone, because you're not. And there's so many people out there suffering, and due to this issue, right? I think we'll continue on next Sunday talking about family stress, and also when someone you love has a drug abuse or addiction problem. And like I said, you can go right on this website and find this information yourself. And there's so many links, on this website that are related links to drug abuse. There's like all these different links, maybe 20, 30 of them on there that point people in the right direction to get more information regarding drug abuse and drug addiction. So it's www.helpguide.org. And then you just look for mental, and then click on drug abuse, drug substance abuse, and it'll bring you right up to this topic right here. And so, we'll continue on talking about that next Sunday. And I just want you all to know that, my heart is with you, and I know how hard it is to be suffering in a situation where, the drugs are kind of what you think is getting you through, and, or you might be thinking, oh, well, I don't have a problem. And it's really, really hard to get off of these problems, right? I know, so many people in my life have been affected by drug use, and just because like I said, my brothers and also my friends, I witnessed so many bad things happen to my friends because of drugs, and I was, hanging around with drug users, and we were all from the same neighborhood, and we were all of these people's, like my best friend's mother hung around with my oldest sisters. See, so we were all interconnected. Like we all knew each other. We all knew about each other's homes, and actually it was quite a dysfunctional neighborhood, because just about everybody I knew was either growing up in a dysfunctional home, or there was a lot of domestic violence, or drug use, or child abuse. So we all hung out together and stuck together like glue, and we all, from early teens to 21, hung out and did a whole lot of drugs together, and we basically just enabled each other's lives, right? We just enabled each other to do this, because that was kind of the only way we could cope with our lives. That just about everybody I knew was either being abused physically or emotionally, or they were just growing up in a horrible home. So that was why we all did what we did. But a lot of my friends are not here with me today, and that's why I want you to stay with us and get help, and make sure that you reach out and get the help that you need. And I'll be back on tomorrow morning, 5:30 a.m., for one child abuse survivor to another, 15-minute chat, and I'm looking forward to that. I haven't quite decided what to talk about yet, but I'm going to today, and we'll just start on with another topic, and I'm just so happy that you can be here. I thank you for your support, and I just hope you reach out and don't suffer alone in silence. Take good care, everybody. Have a great day.